Download the free LP, spread it to your friends and family, even to the little haters mad at me. I got 2 official LPs coming after these. So far I'm grateful for the love that's coming back to me. Truly appreciate the support, especially my peeps that had my back when I was going in and out of court. But of course a shout out to all my people who kept the game alive instead of killing it, selling out with weak flows. My crew, anyone that gave an honest point of view, much respect besides me, man. I do this shit for you, yeah, for you.
I think most girls and boys like to play games. In fact, adults like to play games also. In this game, it's very important to listen to all the instructions. We're going to define your things easily.
So suspect. Now as my rhyme surpasses, see visions are overpasses. Some choose to overlook it, they should be looking past it. We hope for classics, we over you whack bastards. Soul suspects, man, we fall from the average. People try to act like they shit don't stink. They'll be up shit's creek, plus their ship's gon' sink. Now they knee deep in bullshit with nothing to think. On the brink of dealing with the most unpleasant of things. Time switch up, find ways to humble your strut. Just when you was thinking you was the next runner up, shit out of luck, yo, it's just the way it goes. I ain't gotta stress the rest, all you already know. From a distance, street lights start to filter in. Home from a round trip, had to visit new lands. Back in the building again, back from building with fam. Spaced out, sleep deprived, staring at the ceiling fan. So many things that they said to us, we was kids, but it was all bullshit. Yeah, open up your eyes. They would try to tell us one thing, then say the next thing. So I say, never listen to the lies. Man, everyone's a critic, just spit it how you live, it's how it's meant to be intended. So open up your eyes. It's all part of the game, ain't nothing but a dang dog. So I say, learn to read between. Yo, you going at it all wrong, so open your eyes. Yo, them cats be living life like they got 9 lives, so don't try. I hit very hard for my size, 6'2", a little over 185, so get it right. They tough talk is filled with fallacies. Believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. So please, they can go and try to play the road as positive, but either way they talk with it, we know when they prerogative. Even if they polish up their image with some party tracks, we see through the lies, we ain't even need a polygraph. This is passion, the vibe is everlasting. It's better than the last one and colder than the aspens. Used to be overreactive, now I'm overreacting. Now pissed off, I'm mad at me and I'm over here laughing. This shit is crazy, ain't it? The game is crazy tainted, but I'ma do my thing and stay crazy fake. So many things that they said to us, we was kids, but it was all bullshit. Yeah, open up your eyes. They would try to tell us one thing, then say the next thing. So I say, never listen to the lies. Man, everyone's a critic, just spit it how you live, it's how it's meant to be intended. So open up your eyes. It's all part of the game, ain't nothing but a dang dog. So I say, learn to read between the lines. After midnight, when the sun goes down, the moon's up. Some of the best time to make music, so turn it up. Turn it up like the levels on my MP. Sound banks always got samples to say, they never empty. Dusty vinyl drums with the clicks and pops. 99-cent records. Mom and pop shops got 99-cent records, but a bitch ain't one. Music's kinda like my lady, so I treat her like one. Different than bitches I know that be scheming with no heart. Feel peace among the night, been that way from the start. Putting beats in while other peeps are sleeping. Mixing frequent till I'm reaching endless hours of the evening. Can't take breaks for long, music's calling my name. Ain't nothing better than making beats at night in the rain. Write on notebooks like graffiti writers, ride on trains. Rhymes I fill them in like fat cats, can backtrack my game.
Midnight, the stars are shining for you.
It's me and you, me and you.
The moonlight, my heart is asking for you.
Yo, I can tell by the look at.
Well, hello, folks. I believe we are live. Fingers crossed. Still don't have a ton of confidence about whether or not all this is working, but I think I turned my microphone on. And I think I got everything set up properly, as far as the computers are telling me. Today is Paintover Friday, which I am psyched about. I love paintovers. Let's see here. So I'm just getting myself set up, kind of jumping around on a few things, so excuse me not being quite as prepared as possible. Where's my little Michael Jackson glovey thingy? So a bunch of you guys sent in some like raw renderings. Some of you guys sent some finished renderings. A bunch of different stuff that we're going to try and look at today. We're going to try and get through at least 3 or 4. I'm not entirely sure. That kind of span the entire gamut of stuff that's like very early in development and super duper rough to stuff that's like really polished. One of the things, I love paintovers, and I love them for a couple of reasons, and I guess maybe it's worth talking about them for a second before we get into everything. One is that it's a really quick way to test some ideas in 2D. So the same way that like I like to do a sketch before, like an actual 2D sketch before jumping into 3D if I'm working on like a concept piece. While I'm working through a piece, and this goes for both professional and personal work, a lot of times while I'm working through it, if I find myself stuck in 3D or I'm kind of like fiddling around, I don't feel like I'm making progress, a lot of times I'll save wherever I'm at, take it into Photoshop, and figure out what to do next. And just by like quickly kind of scribbling, and a lot of times it's not pretty, but I can kind of get my head to start thinking about things in a different way to hopefully give me some more direction. Or if I'm having a trouble trying to get something to really look good in 3D, sometimes I'll take it into 2D and see if it's a quick fix there. So it's kind of a matter of making sure you're being efficient in 3D, but also making sure you're using 3D and 2D properly, or not properly is not the right word, but efficiently, right? Like if I'm struggling getting the light and color right inside of 3ds Max, sometimes that's just a couple of quick tweaks in Photoshop, and it's nice knowing while I'm in 3D that, okay, I don't have to worry about that because I know that click, 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 and it'll be good to go. So we're going to kind of, because we have a range of images to look at today, we're going to kind of get a view of kind of at least a quick look at how I do all of those different things, because we have such like a variety of images to look at. So it looks like, we got Tassos here. That's awesome. We're going to be seeing some of your stuff in a minute. That we're going to do some painting over. Luis is here. Thank you. Arc Renders, what's going on, Daniel? Glad you're here as well. I'm glad that you guys had the courage to send something in and like show a not finished or not public image to the public in the hope of learning something for hopefully everybody. Let's see. Why is this not working? Is Martine in the chat here? Could tell me why my mouse cursor's not doing its thing? Is it just that far off? Okay. So this is, besides that render issue, this is like the first technical problem we've had in a while. For some reason, my mouse or my pen and my cursor are not lining up. So we're going to get to do a little troubleshooting, hopefully. And hopefully it only takes a second. Let's see. Cintiq Pro. Pen settings. Let's see what's going on with the mapping. Eraser, calibrate. Cancel. 1 second, guys. I know this is not fun. Where is my mapping? I hate looking for the stuffs. Calibrate. Why is it not giving me any display options? Oh, lordy. This is not fun. Let's see if I can't figure it out. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. Display toggle. It's set up for display toggle. On-screen controls. I'm not getting any. Who's all big on walk on tablets and can tell me where on earth my pen mapping went? Because I don't see it anymore. Pen calibration, on-screen control, display settings. I don't think it's pen alignment. Calibrate. Let's see if this fixes it. I don't think it's going to, but you never know. Maybe. Fingers crossed. No, that didn't fix it. And display toggle's not working. And my little Cintiq Pro guy here is not doing the thing. Oh my lordy. Do you have the properties app? I do, and I have it open. And maybe I will show you guys and let you see it, because I'm not seeing the normal option to set up where it should go. Where's the Yeah, so typically there's like a setting in here that sets display mapping, like which displays it goes to. Monitor, yeah. Calibrate just brings this up, which is not what we need at the moment. Because if we do it, it just gives us the same thing as last time. It doesn't actually change it. Okay. What we need for it to do is this function, the display toggle, but that guy's not doing anything, even though it's turned on. Maybe we can reset this guy? Maybe that's what's got to happen? Or maybe we plug this thing in. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, Lord. So excited for good old-fashioned, whatchamacallit here. What kind of port is this? USB micro. So excited for Paintover Friday, and now we're stuck with nonsense. I'm sorry about this, folks. Let's see what we got going here. Maybe if we plug it in. Maybe it's a power issue. Okay, so now it's at least moving. It's not actually toggling. Display, tablet, display toggle. On-screen controls, express keys. Where have all of the settings gone? So that one clearly seems to be that. You know what we're going to do? We're going to turn off the Cintiq, and then we're going to turn it back on. I'm using the right pen. If I lose you guys, I'll be back. I'm not sure what OBS is going to do when I turn this off, but we'll find out here in a second. And I don't have anything up. I think that would be a problem if you guys saw it, but we'll be safe because, you know, clients seem to care about that kind of thing. Okay, turning Wacom off. Seeing what happens. Your device is not connected. Okay. Yep. No device connected. We got you, Roger. And let's try turning it back on again and see what happens. Fingers crossed, folks. Fingers crossed. Well, we're at least now mapped to the right screen. Okie dokie. Well, that's not mapped to the right screen. We're getting there. We are getting there. So, the first one that we are looking in, Alvin sent in. You guys can't see my screen right now, or maybe you guys are about to. Yes. Luca, your name says Milan on there. You're just confusing it. Oh, you're saying I'm all over the place, guys. I'm all discombobulated now. All right. So as I was saying before, Wacom decided to smite my efforts at being productive. Was I love paintovers, and we have lots of cool stuff to do. So thank you again for everyone who sent everything in. This guy is a early test render using the Kitbash Utopia kit. I'm assuming for Bright Art Dark Times, which is awesome. Super psyched to see that. And it's obviously, very, very rough still. So it's just kind of have everything out here. We have the idea that we have a city kind of on a cliffside. But that's about as far along as it is. And right now the lighting's a little bit, the first thing that I'm noticing is the lighting, as far as like what's jumping out at me is that we have, let's see here. We have like some kind of light source that seems to be coming in from the right, or maybe it's like hiding back here. Let's put a pen on that we can actually see. we have some kind of light source that's kind of hiding somewhere back here, so that, which is where we're getting this light on from everything. And then we also have a light hitting the back side of this, and then we have light on the left side of this, and then we have a spotlight on here. So the first thing that I'm thinking is like, okay, we need to prioritize the lighting in this such that there is a one key light. Like no matter how many light sources you have in a scene, you kind of want one to be the defining one or the primary one. That's why it's called a key light, right? So for this, we're going to go back and let's go back to the beginning of this. I'm going to do a couple of things. So first thing, right? So these mountains, which I think should have like that value. We're just going to go ahead and darken them in and keep painting. And I'm not really paying attention to the chat right now, which I apologize for, but we're trying to get some things done. We've got time to make up for now that we've wasted time on technical nonsense. So maybe this guy comes. My own purposes is that if I start to worry about how messily I'm working or like doing things cleanly or anything like that, I get very, very slow. And so I tend to work as quickly and as dirtily basically as possible. Because again, the idea here is to get the starts of like a composition that makes sense. The idea is not to make something pretty. So hopefully this you guys can kind of see where my head's going while I'm drawing through this. But I also hope that it doesn't look pretty because it's not supposed to. That means I'm wasting time on not important stuff. And that's going to be water. Okay. What's going on here? I have lost all of you guys somehow on my screen. Let's see if we pop it out. See if it connects. Okay, appears to maybe be working again. What's going on? Have I lost you? I feel like I've lost you. Okay, working again? Maybe working? Let me know what you guys can see. Well, we're just gonna have to push through, and maybe we'll do, I can't tell you why that happened. Maybe it had something to do when I turned this back on and off. Do you guys see the messy scribble on my screen right now? Hopefully. Oh, Milan. If I wanted to cheat my way out of doing this, I just wouldn't show up at all. Well, I will try and stay aware of what's going on. I wonder if I have a different way of doing it. No, I'll just kind of keep an eye out. I did get a message that said, oh, dear Lord. The internet gods are pissed today. Okay, so I'll try to keep an eye on things. Can you guys see my screen right now and like hear me? We'll see if anyone answers. If so, I'll kind of walk through what I was doing with this one. Again, because it sounds like you guys didn't get to see or hear any of my wonderful ramblings. Okay, so with this one, all that's basically happened is I took this image and I made it black and white because color doesn't matter when you're kind of trying to figure out where to place things. And this is really a compositional challenge of placing the things on the screen where they start to make sense. So I basically just started moving things, and I kind of paint all in one layer, so there's not that much like I can flip through and show you what I did. But basically I'm taking and then this kind of like let me draw a little bit to try to explain what I was thinking. So basically I felt like this is the most important building, so I wanted to give him a little bit more space to breathe and have everything kind of work to him. So I'm readjusting like this top line to kind of go like this, and I want this line to start to work to this, so that everything's kind of pointing at our main subject here is kind of the composition that I have going, or that I'm thinking through. So just kind of moving things and then painting over them into like a Z-depth layer so that they start to make sense to me if I was to go into 3D to continue working on this image, where I would be moving things within space. And so what we're doing here is just kind of painting all of that. And then if I wanted to do lighting, you'd have a couple options of like lighting. The original idea kind of had a whole bunch of light sitting in here. Right, so that all of the buildings, like the main light source was somewhere here. Maybe it's like, if you're going to do that, you'd want to be able to kind of see why. It would be something like this, right? So that you have all these kind of faces kind of starting to come out this way. I think if it was me, I think I would go probably not that direction, and I would just light everything kind of, from this direction. So that this one gets like kind of the glinting strongest highlights and everything else kind of plays secondary to that. I think would be my kind of general direction to it. And then you can put some more buildings in here so that you have, lots of buildings. All right, like this is kind of watery. This is all water. Oops. And then maybe this building catches just a little bit of light at the top. Like, because this is a foreground element, you kind of want it to sit back, which is nice if it's just like kind of silhouetted. And then this mountain would maybe keep getting a little bit of light up here, but mostly it would be in shadow. Right, so that everything kind of structurally is pointing us over to here. And I like the idea that this kind of pops out into the water a little bit. Maybe put a little dock or something over here. But that would be kind of like the direction I would take this. And so even though obviously it's gone from being a rendering to now something that's like been heavily painted over, the idea is that you would take this piece here and move him this way so that he has kind of like that place to breathe. And then this guy, I would take the spotlight off of him because there's no reason for there to be one on him. Like, and it feels very unnatural with everything else. But I would scoot him over this way so that we can kind of start to get the overarching, oops. What did I paint? Oh, nope, turn that off. So that now we kind of have like a composition to work with. So hopefully that worked and you guys were able to follow me on that a little bit. But we're already a half an hour in and we've only done one. So we got to keep moving along. Daniel, to answer your question, what's the difference between using a mouse and Cintiq? Functionally, they do the same thing. They control your cursor, but obviously this allows me to paint and draw specifically. And if I try to do this with a mouse, well, there are probably people that can draw with a mouse faster than I did this. But this gives you a ton more control. I've been using one for 10 years, and I don't really do any Photoshop, whether it's drawing or even editing final renders. Without one. I only recently got the Cintiq. I got this maybe 7 months ago. Maybe longer than that now. For the longest time, I was just using the small Intuos, which was perfectly fine for almost everything. This is another one that's in the very early stages of things. And this one is from Massimiliano, and this one we're going to go through very quickly because I don't want to stay just on the beginning ones. This one's kind of in the same phase, right? Like there's an idea of what's happening, but we don't quite have a full picture yet. And so it's still kind of maybe more of a lighting study than a compositional study. But the thing that I'm seeing in this one, like the first thing that jumps out to me, besides the fact obviously that things are very, very flat, is that right now we have a lot of space that's kind of being used just in this road, which maybe you could Photoshop something in here, but like it kind of splits the image straight in half. And judging from your email and kind of what you're explaining, my thought is that we kind of want an image that reads a little bit more like this, right? And for this one, just to speed things up again, I'm going to turn off all the color. That also makes these light rays go away. Those really stand out, right? Obviously, they're primary colors. If this is about kind of lights coming up from this, then the composition should be kind of more catered to that. Whereas everything else in this composition is saying that this is the important part somewhere in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and go black and white again for the same reasons that this still isn't a color exercise that we need to do. But what we do need to start doing is painting some things down. And so let's go and we just have our color picker up here, and like we're going to start kind of painting some of these sand dunes so that we have a little bit of contrast. And what I think you'd want to do with this one is you'd want it to kind of, the shape of it to start to point into your image, right? And so now we have something that's starting to kind of point inwards there. Why is this image mode 8-bits channel? We have some weird, whatever. Life will go on. You want to go darker. Again, thinking of this again as like a depth mask, we can kind of quickly paint these buildings back together here so that they're a little less intrusive. And I think if this was me, and this is a little bit of a tricky one because like it's kind of about the bridge. It kind of suffers from the same thing from a compositional perspective that the last one did, which is that I'm not entirely sure what the most important thing is. We have these kind of like dunes coming down, the sand, and I know that the idea from your email is that like we have a city that you know, is struggling with life on it basically at this point. But then that kind of points, we're looking straight down this bridge, which says either the thing at the end of it is important or something on the bridge itself is important. And I'm kind of thinking that maybe it would be cool if it's the thing on the bridge that's important, right? So and it is smack dab in the middle of the image, which is a little bit tough, but maybe we can work around that. Let's find out. And so let's go ahead and take like a bright color. I'm kind of starting to think now that we start lighting this from below, right? So we can start kind of suggesting that there's like light coming out of here so that even though the top of the city, is, you know, dead, we still have some life coming from it. Something from down here. And then that actually gives us an opportunity, if we really wanted to start bringing these guys back. But I wouldn't do them as you've done them in the beginning. We don't need all of these. I wouldn't do them as these lights kind of coming from here. I would do them as lights that are coming from kind of behind, right? So that we start having this light down. Oops. So that we start having this light coming from down here. Is kind of the idea that I have. Maybe we have a little bit. Beginning to second guess this, but we will see. Let's see where this goes. Sometimes you just got to take an idea and push it until it gets somewhere. So we can continue to darken this down. Maybe we put like a car up in the front that's broken down or whatever it might be. That could be fun. But the kind of idea that I'm thinking of is that we have light. Let's paint some light that is coming. Oops. Come on. Is that we have some light coming up here. Coming out of these guys. And maybe that's coming out from behind this. Is my thought. And maybe then we have a little bit more light coming back up here, and these can kind of be coming up the buildings. And my intention for putting a little bit of light back here is that then maybe you can go in, and if we're going to try and say like, hey, there's a little bit of hope in this thing, we can put like, you know, a couple standing here or something like that, some kind of people, or you could have like, you know, it depends on the message you're trying to send, right? So like this is saying like, yes, up here is kind of started to go to shit, but there's hope, which, you know, is cool. You could also like start to put, and these will just get a little bit of texture going on here. And then maybe you'd want to crop this a little bit differently. So this will be one direction. I'm not sure that I love everything here. But hopefully it at least gives you kind of an idea of the direction that I was thinking of. And hopefully you can still see this. Oh yeah, this doesn't work anymore. Fabio, everything makes you hungry, my friend. And so that would be kind of like, I think, my idea, where let's lower the horizon, and then we can start to kind of, let's keep painting just a little bit. What time is it? 1:40. We are massively behind schedule. That's okay. We can do more paintovers. I would love to know if you guys are enjoying this kind of like thinking and talking at all, because I kind of love doing it. And I'm kind of thinking that every Friday should be a Paintover Friday. But let's paint in the dark again here, and we could actually kind of go and paint in a little bit of like, this, maybe this is catching this. That's got way out of control. Let's put that down. This one kind of becomes all about the lighting, which, you know, means that like painting it over would be tough. Maybe this becomes something where you like, where you really want to crop in. So that it becomes something like that, right? And then the whole kind of story kind of becomes a little bit clearer, because these guys will take up a little bit more of the frame, right? Like these would be all catching a little bit of light from below. This one might be a little bit hard to read just for my lack of ability to draw this stuff quickly. But the idea is going from like something like this, where it's unclear what this is about, everything kind of has about the same weight of the scene, and making a decision, which is saying, let's make it about the bridge and some kind of story on the bridge, right? So that then we start to have some kind of idea of what's happening. And then you can still keep the sand dunes, and you can actually bring that sand dune back and kind of paint it back in so that it comes up over here. Because like the nice thing with sand dunes is you can put them wherever you want to help kind of guide your eye. So I would shape them such that they're pointing to our subjects. Not the prettiest of paintovers, but that's the direction that I would go. And then I would go back in 3D and kind of try some of those ideas, quickly rough them out, and then kind of keep moving forward. Right? Because like right now, you need to make a decision about what you're trying to say. Because similarly, if this is all about like the sand, I would have done the exact opposite as I did, as opposed to doing this. I would have taken this frame and like cropped it all the way down here and potentially even further down, right? So we could have gone all the way down here, and you really make it about the road, right? And the dead city in the background just kind of becomes a part of that. Where'd my color palettes go? And you can kind of paint in a little bit of texture so it makes a little bit of sense. Right, but again, thinking about kind of like where would I want the sand to be is going to be based off of where I'm trying to get the viewer's eye to go. So in this one, I feel like if we're kind of pointing it in this way, like there should be maybe a subject here would be one option. Or you have somebody walking this direction, heading this way, would be my idea. And then you should spend a whole bunch of time kind of making the sand look beautiful, because that's what you'd be working on for this image. Okay. I'm going to call that two different ideas of like, that I would go in and start trying in 3D and see which one kind of strikes your fancy, or something else altogether. But same as with the first one, let's have a specific opinion of this is the important thing that we're trying to showcase in this image, and everything we're going to try to have work towards that end, at least is the idea. Okay, moving along to Tassos. How are we doing on time? 1:45. All right, so Tassos has an image that's a little bit further along, and it's looking pretty cool. Kind of gives me some like Star Wars vibes, obviously. Doesn't quite have it. It's too clean for Tatooine, but kind of has that idea looking there. And let's see. So this was the raw render that she made. I believe it's a she. I believe Tassos is a she. I hope I'm not mistaken on that. I confuse people all the time. If I just did, I apologize. And I'm getting pings. Am I still working? Hopefully I'm still working. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Oh, Tassos, my apologies. So Tassos male, so he started and he's kind of, this is where he started as far as he kind of has this desert in place and the sky in, and he's dropped the sky in, he's added a few details and started to adjust some things. My first thought when I sit here looking through this is that we have a composition that's a little bit of a challenge. And the reason that it's a challenge is that, you know, like if we were to draw, like this image is kind of getting cut in half, right? We have bright blue up here, bright orange up here. And so everything's kind of at full saturation almost. And it's like 50% blue, 50% red or orange. So my first thought is, okay, so we need to we could adjust the composition, right? We could go and start and maybe we just crop down a bit of the sky, or a lot of the sky as it were, so that we get this kind of like super horizontal perspective. And that takes away the most saturated part of the blue, but also gives a little bit more prominence to this guy here, right? Because he's bigger in frame, and B, that little bit of blue that's reflecting on him is resonating more, whereas it kind of gets lost in the big picture. So that's kind of my first thought, and I like that a lot. I'm just kind of doing this right. I glanced at these while I lined them up beforehand, but anything that I say here could be completely wrong. But that's my first thought, is that this isn't an image that's about 50% sky and 50% sand. This is about these two dudes. Oops. Got these two dudes, him and his little buddy back here, which, by the way, is like this guy surfing down the hill. I think is my favorite part of this image, because it's like a little Easter egg of this dude, and I just kind of picture him squealing like, "Hey!" I think he's making a stupid sound while he goes down, and so that's I really like that. So, so I think I'm gonna stick with this kind of like really strong landscape going out this way. And I think the first thing I'm also going to do is I'm going to adjust the colors a bit. And this isn't necessarily the best way to adjust colors. It's kind of the simplest way. In that just grabbing a hue saturation layer. But I'm going to move the blue a little bit more towards cyan to complement this kind of like strong orange. And if I can, make it a whole bunch darker. And I might have to do that with some painting, which we can do. As you make things darker, they tend to lose saturation, or they should gain saturation. So just kind of toning this down. And I think I went a little bit overboard on that. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start... I want to break this up. So right now, sorry that I'm kind of like thinking out loud here. We have this like strong line that comes across here, and it takes us right across from our dude, who's like kind of important, right? And so let's go in and start brushing some colors into this. So first thing I think I'm going to do is just kind of like paint a little bit of blue over this, which will be atmosphere, and obviously we're going to tone this down in a moment. But that's going to desaturate it and hopefully push it back a little bit. We might want to use it as a screen layer too. And then I think what you would want in this image is you want something to stop this slope that's taking us all the way out of the image, which this guy's kind of already doing. So what we'll maybe do is we'll take this and we will just make it taller. Right, I want something that's going to start to force the eye back in, as opposed to just running off the page here. So we can paint in little highlights. This guy, I kind of like that guy. This is not helping. So this is helping to tell a story, but it's also distracting me from like just looking at things. So we're just going to paint the orange color over it, and then we're going to tone that back a little bit just to like, by painting the colors back in, you see how it goes from something that like jumps out at you and then starts to go away. And same with these guys up here in the front. Let's kind of have all this start to blend together. I think that this guy is doing more harm than good. Like that's like a rock that would look nice over here. But we want to give our guy over here a bit of space to breathe. And everything I'm doing with this one, even though I'm still painting it because of, you know, reasons of time, you could do everything I'm doing in like a finished way on this image and not have to go back and re-render any of this. We just don't have time to do it now. And then the last thing that I think that I really want to do with this image, ooh, we might have, do we have a depth layer in this? Masks, dude. Desert Alpha, depth anywhere? Maybe depth. Aha, well, we're just gonna take that guy. Turn that layer back off. Nope, we're just gonna paint. We don't have time for this. Sorry about the beeping. I don't know if you guys can hear the beeping or not. I think that's muted at the moment. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go and give me my brush back. We get it, 0 pixels. Thank you, Photoshop. Is actually I'm gonna use a lasso, and I'm just gonna kind of very, very dirtily lasso our little guy here. Not gonna worry about that. We're gonna go through this, and we're going to, don't pay attention to how drastic this is at the moment, because we're gonna tone it way, way down. But we just want to get, right now there's 0 separation between foreground and this guy, right? And there's a lot of ways that we can create more of it. We can also take the inverse of that. And we can change the color on this guy just a little bit. I think he's going to go maybe a little bit more that way. And then this guy, we're just gonna go a little bit stronger, and then we're gonna paint in at like 50% opacity. Not that one. Sorry about that. This one. So we start to get a little bit of separation. And then I think I'm going to bring the whole thing down a little bit. Maybe we bring, I think I went a little bit overboard in the bringing the saturation out of the sky. So we could just paint it, but instead we'll use a hue saturation layer, and we'll just paint in a little bit more of that, and maybe we'll make that a little bit more saturated. We should use the soft brush. This is just taking a merged layer and putting the whole thing on top of it on screen. We're going to blur it so it's a bit softer. And we're going to go ahead and use this to kind of start give this a little bit more shape. Okay. So I feel like we could go a lot further with a lot of these things than we are at the moment. I still don't like the sky. Maybe we do need a little bit more blue. I feel like I kind of went a little bit excited over that. I'm going to paint a lot of it, and then I'm just going to turn it back again. So the idea and hope with this one is that in just like a couple of minutes, so we went from, where's all the painting start? The painting starts somewhere around here. So as opposed to like everything being super duper saturated, I've kind of like toned it maybe a little bit too far back, depending on what you like. But as opposed to like this, when I look at this full image, looks like it's, you know, like a long throw away, even though I know in distance wise it's not. And then this, I think, starts to get an idea that we have some haze and particles in the atmosphere, which you would have in the desert, that starts to push things further and further back. I would just do it much more cleanly than I have done it here. But I hope that that makes sense. And that, what is going on? I hope that that makes sense for you guys. And I hope that that's like a little bit helpful. I think that there's a lot of directions you can go with on this. But hopefully the idea that without taking away, you could also add more sky. But in the original composition, back like this, it's just kind of all saturated and there's too much blue and red together. You either want less blue and more red, or you could alternatively, if this was all about kind of the size of the landscape, you could have lifted the canvas as well and had a lot of sky. Hopefully that makes you a little bit of sense. And hopefully that's a little bit helpful. Okay, so we're running real low on time, but I did at least want to look at one more project, and this one actually is a quick one as far as what I think we should do edit-wise, or at least what's in my head that we should do edit-wise. Let's find my folders. Okay, recent. In here. Da, 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 da. So this one is from Daniel. From Arc Renders, who's been in our chat, and I appreciate you being in my chat very, very much and hanging out. So he did this project, which is like more or less finished enough that it's up on his website. So super duper polished. Hopefully you guys can see that. It was a recreation of another house on here that an architect actually built, I believe. And it looks beautiful. Like, you know, there's a cool sky, the materials look nice, the grass looks really, really nice. And there's kind of a set here, and I think I have a couple comments that I think some are worth painting and some are not. But most of what I think about in this is I start thinking about composition, right? Like the materials all look nice in this. Like the glass looks like glass, the steel looks pretty much like steel, or colored concrete. I guess maybe because I'm not sure between that. Maybe you could use a little bit of tweaking there. These trees are really kind of distracting, so I'd maybe give it a little bit of depth and reduce the contrast back here so that we see more of the house. And I would maybe try taking this one and seeing what happens if you made this super horizontal landscape. This is the image that I think I want to paint over, so we'll talk about that in a second. We're not going to talk about this one because kind of the same things apply. These two are ones that you really couldn't paint over. I guess you could paint over. But these become compositional studies, and it's similar to the problem that we were having with the first two. And actually, let's go ahead and open these up. Minus. So that we can actually look at these if my computer wants to work. What is going on? You guys have broken my computer somehow. Let's see here. My mouse just not. Dear Lord, guys, I apologize for the issues. Okay, let's talk about composition really quickly, particularly in these two detail shots, and we're going to get back and talk about this one in a moment. Assuming that my keyboard's still working, maybe if I plug this guy in, she seems to have stopped working altogether. What a day, guys. What a day. Come on, baby. We might be working without a keyboard, which will be a new one. Even for me. Oh, yeah. We definitely have zero love from the keyboard right now. Don't know what's happened today. Today is a jinxed Friday. Okay, so how well can I work in Photoshop without a keyboard working at all? We will find out here in a moment. It's going to be a tough one. No keyboard. This guy doesn't work. So we'd have an Alt key? Well, we kind of have an Alt key. We'll paint with blue. So in this image, it's almost a 2-point, but there's still a little bit of perspective in this, or almost a 1-point. Oh, and no undos either. Challenge, folks. Challenge. But it's hard to say if this is about the hallway that kind of like wraps around the house. I would very much want for this to become a 1-point that's looking straight down here. If this is, as opposed to that, is more about the relationship of all of these, I would probably turn the camera so that we're not cutting this off, right? And so it's clearly a 2-point that actually is looking more into this space. As it is, it's hard to say, is it about this or is it about this, right? So it's, again, making a decision. Same thing here. We have a situation where it's hard to say whether the point of focus is right here, right? But we can barely see what's going on with these like louvers. The composition seems to say that this is all about the floor, but the floor is almost entirely out of focus. If this was about the floor, you'd probably want to focus on the floor and maybe give it more space. So it's not so much that we need to paint over these as that's time to get into 3D, make a decision about what your image is about, and then make sure that where you're putting your camera is speaking to that reason. Let's see. Guys, so far today we have had a Cintiq not work properly. This thing, I can't even read what the switches say. Maybe that. I've had my keyboard stop working. And the live stream's been glitching. So, let's see what I can do. I have like a very clear idea of what I want to do with this one. And so this will be like, the first kind of like painting over is like, how do we get composition figured out and like the structure of an image so that we can work clearly in 3D. The second one, you could take those changes that I was making. You could potentially do them in 3D. You could also do them in 2D. That's kind of up to you. And then this one is kind of, similarly, it's a very finished piece and a very finished image. Oh, dear God. But it's not quite getting us where I want it to be. How? Maybe. Oh, yeah. At least the mouse still works. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. So the first thing that jumps out at me in this image, and I think that this one's kind of unique in that it's purely, I think, kind of a color problem that we have. And that we have this kind of like very warm sky. And then we kind of have this like lush green and cool foreground where the house is. And the first problem that I see is that if you have this warm sky, and right, on all the terrains being lit by the sky at this point, right, when you have this very warm sky, you don't really get any greens. It's just not the way that, thank you for the subscription, appreciate that. So we have to do something about these greens. So we're going to desaturate them and we're going to make them warmer. And we can do that just like super duper quickly with a hue saturation layer and using this little thumb thing, which I think generally does a pretty nice job of figuring out which color it needs to look at. So we're trying to get that to sit together. And then this house is like super duper cool right now, temperature wise, which is one direction to go. But I think that my hunch would be is that we want that to be a bit warmer. And let's go more saturated, and then let's go like that, and where's invert if it's not Control I? What do you guys think? Oh, this is adjustments? Invert? Haha! We have thwarted them. So let's just kind of like paint in some warm tones down here. And I want them to be warmer. And maybe a little towards those colors, not quite that saturated. Okay, that's looking better. And then we still have some of these blues and cyans that came up here from my kind of very, very messy way of adjusting this. And we can go in and we can grab them again. And this is grabbing the greens. And we're just going to basically move them into kind of like a purplish color, purplish, bluish color, and then desaturate them. And we might need to stretch this a little bit to kind of get to it. And we're going to pull out those blues because the blues aren't going to help us at all. And I think I'm also going to pull this over and I'm going to grab these cyans into this mix here. Because again, we don't have a blue sky, so the shadows shouldn't be filled in with blue yet. At least not unless we were going to color all of the shadows throughout the image, which is not what I would do. Right, so hopefully this is kind of starting to tie things together, and we're actually, surprisingly, we've used hue saturation for all of this, which is not kind of my general way of doing things. And this isn't like quite a paint over, but it's also, this is something like right now this looks all the same color now because of how I colorized it. And so I would probably go back and re-render this as opposed, if this was for a client and I wanted everything to be cleanly done, I would probably go back and like adjust some of the color of the lights on the interior and to kind of how this whole scene's being lit to match the plate that I'm going to guess does not come from the HDRI that this was rendered with, but was placed in Photoshop, right? And we have this kind of like weird cyan band here, some colors up here that don't seem to like resonate with the rest of the image. That to me is like a pretty good change to the whole thing. There were a couple of things in here that I was thinking we might want to do with actually painting in some stuff down here, but I don't think I'm going to try it given that we're out of time and that like I'm scared that like all of my peripheries are going to die if I keep doing this. This is ridiculous. E-Man, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you here. Thank you for stopping by. It's been a technically challenging Friday, but we've gotten to do some painting. So yeah, so let's flick back between being done and adjusted. So this is like, again, depending on where you're working in the process, you can go back and change some things in 3D and probably make everything that I just did look a hell of a lot better. Or you could just spend more time in 2D and continue to kind of refine it in this direction and probably end up with pretty similar results. We probably want to tone some of this stuff down. But, you know, I don't have a working mouse or working keyboard, so I don't know what I've done. So yeah, let me know if that made sense at all, guys. I hope it kind of did. What a blustery day. Also, I'd love to know if you guys enjoyed doing paintovers, even though it wasn't the smoothest day, because I love doing them, and I hope that there's something to be learned from it. That one we're not going to touch today. That one, we kind of talked about it again. And when you're thinking about your composition, you should always know, like, be able to say, this is what this image is about. The one thing that it's about. Because everything between lighting, colors, camera, where you're putting things, how big they are in the frame, every single one of your decisions should be based around some idea, right? Everything should be serving some purpose. But yeah, let's pull up this one. This one was kind of fun, right? We kind of have two options for this. One is you make it all about the foreground and the background of the city just becomes a supporting element. Or you kind of go this direction. You make it all about the bridge. Would be the idea for that one. For this one, the idea is just kind of go through and start to make some decisions again, right? What is this image about? I think it's about this building. It's a combination of like we have a cliffside futuristic city that's specifically about this building. And so try to move things, place things within a frame that A, keeps a viewer's eye moving across it, but also reinforces this idea that we have this one, city-sized building and then like a normal-sized city around it, or whatever it might be. There are a lot of right answers, I think, to these types of problems, but you always want an answer. And then this one, I would say crop it, which you could also do in camera, right? Like you could still keep the same aspect ratio that you started with, but you would want to probably start to reorganize. You'd have to move things besides just the camera to make that work. But also then give it depth, right? So that this looks further away. And this is a very extreme version of it. But the idea is I want to have depth, and I want everything kind of like pointing to this. And again, like you have this like pretty strong line here that's taking a viewer right out of the page, as opposed to having something, that takes the viewer like kind of across through and back to like the subject, which for me is, I forget what model that is in Star Wars, but one of these guys. Yeah. I hope that was kind of helpful. I'm sorry that it was not a smooth day. I do think I'm going to continue doing these unless, my technology completely quits on me. Next thing, the computer will break? I don't know. Anyways, we're way over time today. Thank you guys all for hanging out, and thank you very much for everyone who submitted images. I think that that's a brave thing to do, to have someone talk about your work without you getting to really respond in any way. I think these all have the potential to become great images, and I hope that you continue all working on them. I hope everyone's staying safe and staying positive and doing something productive with their time, whatever that may be. And I'm going to continue doing these right through the weekend. So every day at 1, I'm going to be here fighting with, waiting on renders and wondering which piece of hardware is going to break next. Yeah, and if you would like me to paint over yours, or if I didn't get to yours today, because there were a few other people that sent in images that I was hoping to get to, but obviously today did not go smoothly. And I'll try to get to them next Friday. But if you have any things that you would like me to look at or talk about or anything like that, please shoot me a DM, leave a comment in the chat. I haven't really been paying attention to this at all today. But I thank you all for being here, and I hope you're all well. I hope you're washing your hands, staying isolated, and having fun. Yes, talk to you all soon. Fingers crossed, no other hardware breaks today. Fingers crossed. Later, folks. Happy rendering.